Welcome to the third video in the kick technique series. There's no point in training a single type of kick to perfection when you may well never get the opportunity to use it. Fights or sparring matches, at least those that are won by kicks, are won by kick combinations. So it's a good idea to build up a repertoire of kick combinations that you can execute well and swiftly. In this video, I'll outline a few general principles which should help anyone learning kick-oriented martial arts to improve the effectiveness of their kick combinations. First, let's look at one of the most common combinations you may see in kick-oriented martial arts, the roundhouse back roundhouse combination, or rather roundhouse back leg hook kick, as it's better known in English. Here you see a left roundhouse followed by a right back leg hook kick, but the same principles would apply to a roundhouse followed by a back kick, for example. Now let's look at it in slow motion. Although it's still a good idea to practice this combination to give you a better feel of it, there are a few points of weakness in this kind of kick. First, it starts with the back leg. That means that if your opponent sees the kick coming, he may well be able to land a kick on you before your kick has even been born. The second point of weakness, in this kick of mine at least, is that the heel leaves the ground, leaving my balance precarious. It's easier said than done when speed comes into the equation, but you need to give priority to keeping your balance as strong as possible. And here, that means making sure an already weak position is not made weaker by poor balance. The third point of weakness is that this combination necessitates taking your eyes away from the opponent, if only for a moment. But the most important point of weakness is starting out by kicking with the rear leg. So, first general principle, favor your leading leg for the first kick of a combination. Maybe not every time, depending on circumstances, but at least 90% of the time. So if you wanted to land a roundhouse kick to start with, a so-called front leg roundhouse would be preferable. Most Chinese martial arts and all Southern Chinese martial arts favor low kicks over high kicks, and many warn about the dangers of high kicks. Many Chinese martial artists will also point out how easy it is to see a high kick coming, especially one that involves a twist of the body like a roundhouse. Although this is a valid criticism, as my own Chinese martial arts teacher pointed out, being able to see a kick coming doesn't necessarily mean you can do anything about it. A young, well-trained practitioner can make use of speed and feints to make that ability to see kicks coming almost useless. I had one such instructor in Taekwondo, only 18 years old, who was so fast and so fluid in changing his kick combinations that even if I could see his first kick coming, and even occasionally be able to do something about it, that never helped me defend against the second or third kick in his combinations, and I invariably ended up sprawled on the floor. However, once you get into your late 30s, you will gradually begin losing the speed advantage, no matter how hard you train. So, for older practitioners, I recommend a different approach. Keep the initial kick in a series low, to minimize telegraphing your intent through upper body movement. This is typically when the greatest space between you and your opponent exists, and that gives them more time to react. Later on in the series, especially if your first or second kick has successfully made contact, the opponent will have less time to react, and so you will have more leeway in terms of kick height. You can see an example of that here.
50岁以下之人，动作应该至少比我快一点，比我有力量一点。
Let's look at the first two kicks again in slow motion. Being low, the first kick is not easy to see coming. Now let's look at the later two kicks. If my first and or second kick had made contact, I would now have more leeway for using kicks that start out with the back leg, as shown here, or for kicks which involve more shoulder movement, like the last kick. So, second general principle. Begin your kick combinations with lower kicks and less elaborate kicks. Save the high kicks for times when your opponent has less time to deal with them. A third principle applicable to anyone of any age, but especially to older practitioners whose speeds may be slowing, is, wherever possible or practical, to not waste time letting the kicking foot drop to the ground after a kick has been completed. You can see an example of that in these same two kicks. So, third general principle. If you can, deliver your second or third kick in a combination without returning your foot to the ground to save time. Learning a martial art that involves little or no kicking, like Aikido for example, doesn't mean you shouldn't take the time to learn kick techniques yourself, because other people may use them. And the best way to get a grasp of the advantages and the limitations of kick techniques is, of course, by practicing them yourself.